We're going to proceed with the last presentation by Clara Masnatta. Clara has a PhD from the Harvard/Humboldt University of Berlin. She's an independent scholar, curator, and author based in Berlin and Buenos Aires. She's the author of Giselle Freund, Photography on the Stage, which is forthcoming, and several book chapters. Masnatta was a fellow at the Berlin Institute of Cultural Inquiry in the past. She was a guest curator at the Museum of Modern Art of Buenos Aires, and she is currently associated to the Museo Evita, Instituto Nacional de Investigaciones Históricas, Eva Perón. Yeah, thank you so much. I didn't read the book chapters, but thank you so much.
There you go. Well, hello everybody. My presentation today will focus on the archive of trans memory, or Archivo de la Memoria trans, to which I will refer either as AMT or ATM, which would be the short in English, but it's kind of funny, ATM. So AMT is an independent collective project that is run by transgender women from Argentina who collect photographs for the construction and preservation of visual memory of the transgender community in Argentina. The project started digitally in 2012 as a Facebook group, and today the archive holds 20,000 photographs and documents, and it is the largest queer trans archive in Latin America, and it keeps growing. In the first place, I would like to foreground the emergence of the archive of trans memory in the context of the recent struggles of women and trans women for justice in Argentina. In the second place, I will approach the initiative through a definition of artivism as a crossing of activism and or social protest and art. And here will be art activism for gender justice. In the third place, I will posit that the Archive of Trans Memory is a counter-archive, and as well as a model archive for other trans and queer visual depositories around Latin America. So first, the recent years have seen an ongoing revision of history along the emergence of intersectional feminism and the visual activism to it, and art to it related. This emerging visual culture is infused with innovative knowledge, and about the imbrication of Western binary gender paradigms and based on biology and the neo-colonial power behind it. So while still pursuing transgender equality and reproductive rights, Argentina has given rise to very vital and very widespread feminist and trans-feminist social movements. It has enforced unique laws that depathologize gender dissidence and generated also an inclusive language with a non-binary plural to express a collective sense in lieu of the traditional plural form. This inclusive language, which contests the ruling of the Royal Spanish Academy, was recently officially banned by the far-right new government. So it is high time in the struggle for visibility of gender diversity and glottal politics. So let me step back a little bit now, yes, for a little historical review. In 2014, women joined together under the motto Ni una menos, not one less woman, and took the streets to decry gender violence and machismo. Claims for concrete measures against femicide or feminicide and the legalization of abortion developed further. The movement for reproductive rights, known as the Marea Verde, or the Green Tide, kept growing, and the legalization of abortion was finally passed as law in December 2020. At the same time, the movement Ni Una Menos became global, as you might remember the viral dance that happened all over the world. So what started as an act of public grief and defiance against patriarchy rapidly found an angry but also unexpectedly upbeat tone, a combination of collective fury and exhaustion expressed in highly theatrical and political performances of affection and resistance. "We are moved by desire" became one of the movement's taglines. So the identity of feminist political activism, the connection between gender equality and class struggle, and the movement's combination of mourning, ecstasy, and desire, and feminism's ability to alter the political imagination and even our common sense, are all on the table. Feminism is interrogating the very categories and systems, both legal and economic, that fuel power dynamics. And the current intersectional feminist movements that address all these aspects and that fight for transgender equality and rights, and also their visual activisms, do have a political and socio-economic precedent in the political and socio-economic crisis that unfolded in 2001 in Argentina, on the one hand. On the other hand, disobedience has a history in Argentina. The Madres de Plaza de Mayo is the reference, the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, who during the dictatorship between 1976 and 1983, these mothers demonstrated and claimed for their disappeared children around the political center of Argentina, the Plaza de Mayo Square. Yet today, in contrast, the tone is festive when it comes to intersectional feminist movements, because not one less operates, in Veronica Gago's words, preserving vitalism and to, I quote, to safeguard the expansions of liberties, joys, pleasure, and affects. So the mother of Plaza de Mayo white scarves and the green scarves, first used by young activists in the campaigns for legal abortion in Argentina, can be read as the passage from one form of activism based on blood ties and first-hand victims to another form of activism comprising anonymous activism, that is, from filiation to affiliation. I said that the 201 crisis in Argentina is a precedent for current trans-feminist grassroots movements and their visual activisms. As art historian Andrea Junta described in her book Post-Crisis from 2009, I quote, "The space of the atelier was replaced by the street. A collectivization of artistic practice transpired." And today, and since then, Argentine art is strongly identified overseas by, missing? You are missing a picture. Anyway. By Argentine art is strongly identified overseas by this sense of mobilization and participation. Now, I would like to turn to the second question that I raised, is it art or artivism? So I would like to provide a working definition of artivism as art plus activism, a crossing of art and protest. And the activist art of artivism is understood as different from sheer propaganda. Artivism overlaps, yet is not equal with contemporary art. Artivism makes the artist an agent. It propels the traditional spectator from contemplation into action, and so breaks with the art iconographical tradition, that is, the past, to become oriented towards the future, that is, action. There is a confluence of artivism and art, and there is also a porosity from the streets of the museum, of the activism to the Museum of Art. So, specifically, the fight for transgender equality and rights reached a new landmark in 2012. The law of gender identity was passed in Argentina, and this was just 2 years after the same-sex marriage law was passed. And with this very progressive law, one's gender is one's choice. One only needs to state to the authorities which gender one identifies with and should be stated in one's identity card, et voila. And this gender law removed legal barriers for gender recognition and also provided health care to trans youths and adults. So this gender identity law is an extremely progressive law in its gender fluidity. I myself had both genders in my ID card for a different reason, but it is extremely easy and fluid to change one's gender. And the recognition of gender identity, we have to state that was the fruit of many years of struggle, chiefly from the transvestite community. It is important to note that in Argentina, the transgender community has reclaimed the term travesti or transvestite for their self-denomination. The term is really taken up with pride, much in the same sense as schwul is taken in German for the gay community. I would also like to point out that until 1998, transvestites were technically illegal and systematically victims of police violence. Not being appropriately dressed according to one's gender was an offense charged with arrest. So cross-dressing was banned under the rule of the so-called police decrees, edictos policiales, and these were enforced until 1998. And this, you can imagine, made everyday life things such as getting bread from the baker an ordeal. The gender identity law, how do I play this? Technician? Uh-oh. Hello?
He's coming.
This is a video. This is not a picture. This is a video. Oxy? It's a video. No. Yes, it is. Can we go to Google Slides, where my presentation is?
No video.
Okay. This is not okay. I sent you a video. Anyway. The gender identity law was one of the two driving forces behind establishing the Archive of Trans Memory. The other was the death of trans activist Claudia Pia Baudraco. Pia was an avid snap shooter and a photo collector, and she also was one of the founders of Asociación de Travestis Argentinas. In 2012, after the passing of the law and the passing of Pia, Maria Belén Correa founded AMT on Facebook while living as a refugee in Germany. Together with photographer Cecilia Estalles in Buenos Aires, Belén developed the project, collecting and scanning the personal archives of trans women and sharing their lives and stories first online and later in print. So the project was born out of the desire for community building, sharing news, memories, and images of one another. It sought equally to remember the dead and to celebrate the survivors of the community who suffered violence by the police, imprisonment, and the AIDS pandemic. The project grew by word of mouth, and today is the largest trans archive in Latin America. Since 2012, AMT has digitized and preserved around 20,000 objects. The archive operates by either loan or donation. By loan, the objects are digitized and then returned to the owner, but their means of acquisition exclude purchases so far. While photography forms the core of AMT, the archive also holds written documents, personal letters, diaries, interviews, sound recordings, photo albums, and newspaper clippings, police files, court records, ID cards, magazines, posters, and around 100 VHS tapes. It also holds a personal archive of 45 persons, and it goes as far back as 1935 with the holdings of Malva Solís, which we just saw in the other slide. The archive is currently sustained through external grants, chiefly international funding. Currently, ATM is supported by the International Trans Fund. In 2018, ATM was awarded its first grant by the Memoria program from Mexico in its first call for the projects for the preservation and safeguarding of photographic and audiovisual heritage. And the Memoria project trained the amateur trans women group into archivists. They trained the team in the plethora of tasks involved in archival processes and protocols, provenance, copyright, preservation, arrangement, all the way to the opening the access for consultation. The ATM initiative also includes a documentary TV series, podcast, YouTube channel, and social media activism. Additionally, documentary filmmakers have made some ATM holdings into films, as we can see now. ATM's expansion into a larger editorial project in 2021 produced 3 books. A total of 4 books have been published since 2020. The first pink book, Archivo de la Memoria Trans Argentina, was a finalist for the best photo book at Paris Photo in 2021. I do have it, so if you want to peruse it, come talk to me. I brought it. In 2022, the photo book is on Claudia Piaz Baudraco's activism and adventures, undertitled If Your Mother Saw You. In 2023, the book Our Codes, to which I will return. And just like last week, Kumas came out. These books all follow a documentary approach. They combine snapshots with personal correspondence or journal writings and interviews as the oral history keeps growing in the project. Books also feature newspaper clippings of transvestite detentions as testimonies of the legal struggle for gender identity. In the past years, the archive has traveled internationally. In 2019, it took part of the Reina Sofia Museum in Madrid, a conference or workshop around feminisms. In 2021, ATM engaged in a digital collaboration for a queer Tate with Tate Gallery in London, which we can see here in the picture. In 2021, it was part of a group show at the Virreina Center in Barcelona. In 2023, it was a part of the Sao Paulo Biennial. In 2023, also, the Leslie Lohman Museum or Gallery in New York hosted an exhibition of the ATM in the form of a slideshow on our which was titled Nuestros Códigos, Our Codes. And in 2023 also, it was showcased at the CIMAM annual conference in Buenos Aires, which is the International Committee for Museums and Collections of Modern Art. At present, ATM is part of a group show at the Spanish Cultural Center in Buenos Aires that pivots on the feminist anti-capitalist revolt with which I started my presentation. Most recently, in 2023, the archive expanded with a new space that serves a threefold function. It is an art gallery, a library and a bookstore, and third, a communal space for social work. This is a space to provide free healthcare for senior trans women, thanks to doctors or psychologists who volunteer for holding consultations with them. And the collective also offers workshops, arts and crafts workshops, to help the trans women develop a means of existence, since most of them have a past in sex work, which was the only kind of work they were allowed to do. And they also have leisurely group outings. Now, however multifarious and expanding, photography remains at the core of AMT, and specifically vernacular photography. Thousands of images of the quotidian life of the trans community showcase their interpersonal intimacies. The first AMT book from 2021, which I mentioned, that I have, is a variation on the family album. It's the skilled images always marked by aesthetic simplicity. Very beautiful. And the simplicity of the composition of the snapshots really encodes the highly conventional character and reveals that they're artifacts for memory and affect, which you would have seen in the video. That didn't happen. And since snapshots are defined by their aesthetic simplicity and by a certain rhetoric of authenticity, I would like to say that the snapshot's truth is the truth of feelings. And this the snapshot genre's constitutive affective charge is also rooted in the physicality of the photograph, which is itself a memory device, and how this is kept in boxes. It's really too bad that we don't have the video. Anyway, by the original owners who did the self-archiving, as we already heard on this panel. So my third point is that ATM is a counter-archive that opposes an archive with an archive of affects. It opposes itself to the archive of policing. Or, since we are in Greek, it is an anarchive, a counter-archive or an anarchive. And this opposition is really taken head-on in the book Our Codes, because here, rather than the mugshots taken by the police when detained for cross-dressing, we see the sensationalist pictures of transvestites that were published on tabloids. And this was their public image in the 80s and 90s, or before. Or really the only images publicly available. And this sordid images of crimes contrast very much to the family album of sorts that we enjoyed in the first half of the book Nuestros Códigos, Our Codes. So, to quote the words of founder Belén Correa, since we didn't have a space to talk about our history outside psychiatry and the police, we had to invent it. We built the right to memory and also to have nice moments, to go away from the commonplaces about our community and put together another narrative. So ATM is a counter-archive, and also it is a model archive. A satellite archive of ATM is growing today in Neuquén, in Patagonia, in southernmost Argentina. Also with ATM as model, a sister initiative, Archivo de la Memoria Trans in Mexico, launched in 2021 as an online platform. And across Latin America, we also find other trans archives that may not be directly affiliated, like the Archivo Memoria Sexodisidentes in Rosario, in Argentina. In Colombia, the Archivo Transqueer. In Honduras, too. And in Bolivia, where David Arucupa created the Archivo Kiwa of the Memoria Trans. So these counter-archives and archives activate our social engagement and political engagement, and to some extent denounce certain obsolete or too authoritarian safeguarding of knowledge. So to conclude, I have a final moving image with greetings from the Memoria, the Archivo Trans, and I see it's blank. So, yeah, it's blank. So the IT team is not very good with moving images, even though this is a photography conference. So to conclude, I would just say, Evcharisto, thank you.